when talking about proportions, this is how we're going to end up solving a lot of our problems. And what this kind of comes back to is let's go back and consider what were our fraction equality. Like for instance, if I were to say 3/6, if I were to say I want to reduce that as a fraction, I can say, well, 3 goes into both. I'm going to divide by 3, and I'm going to get 1/2. Well, we know that reducing the fraction, that's what we'd get. But what this now is setting up is when we have this equality of fractions, the equality of ratios is what makes a proportion. Now, you're going to hear a term called cross multiply. I don't like to use it because oftentimes it's used improperly, like you hear sometimes with students trying to divide or multiply fractions, and sometimes it's used more often improperly than it is properly. The common book name is the product of the means equals the product of the extremes. But when you multiply the opposite corners, because here's what's actually happened is I want to say, well, if I'm dividing by 2, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. If I'm dividing by 6, I'm going to multiply both sides by 6. And that's what's kind of saying get those to cancel. But again, this idea of cross multiply by those opposite corners is what's saying my 3 times 2 is the same as 6 times 1. Now we know that 3 times 2 is 6, 6 times 1 is 6. This is a true statement. This fraction reducing is a great example of what makes a proportion equal. But what this is going to solve for is if I had something like x over 5 equals 20 over 1,000 or 100, I'll say x over 100, then what I would say is in this course, we're going to be trying to find out, well, what is that x value? What number divided by 5 is the same number as 20 divided by 100? Well, here's where when we multiply by those opposite corners, the means and the extremes, or the cross multiplier, whatever you want to call it, 100 times x equals 5 times 20. And if I were to say, okay, well, 100x equals 5 times 20 is 100. And again, I deliberately picked this so that when I divide by my 100, it's multiply and divide, x equals 1. And what that means is 1/5 is the same as your 20 over 100. And the next few problems is when we're going to be looking at this as an example of when we're able to solve for things that are maybe extremely large or extremely small numbers. When dealing with science, maybe we'll be talking about atom molecules, or maybe we'll be talking about something extremely large, like the size of buildings or the weight of extremely large items. Planets, I think, is one of our Excel files. But this idea of cross multiply, this idea of proportions, what are equal ratios, is going to play a major role in this course.